Like I mentioned earlier, it's time for business, and Laban Clifton's area is here. Laban.
Thank you very much, Trevor. And yes, indeed, it's time now to take a look at what's trending online, and of course, on the look onto what is on the copy of the Business Daily today. We're leading the story on the acquisition by Java by Abraj Group, and of course, Kevin Ashley, the CEO of the company, is set to take home 1.3 billion shillings. That's as part of his stake in the Java deal. We'll be coming to that because we want to show you the front page on that story, and of course, we'll come back later into that. But just to give you more details into that acquisition by Abraj Group of Java House. Now, what we have so far, of course, with the information coming in from the acquisition, which is Abraj from ECP. So remember, ECP and Kevin Ashley were the owners, but now, of course, Abraj has taken over 100%. So that's a Dubai-based bank. That's Abraj Group. Will be the new owners of Java House. That's after regulatory approvals for the 100% buyout deal is done. Now, Java's founder, and chairman, that's Kevin Ashley, will now own less than 10% of Java, while Emerging Capital Partners, that's ECP, exit as the shareholders. The investors confirmed this takeover news that NTV broke months ago, but did not quite disclose the cost of the deal. Now, a source had, however, earlier informed NTV that it is in the range of about $100 million, or just above 10 billion shillings. Now, this development is set to see Java's expansion streak continue as it deals with the competition arising from the influx of international eateries that have set up in Kenya. Now, this buyout will also include the other two brands under the Java Group, that's Planet Yogurt and 360 Degrees and Artisan Pizza. Concerns have arisen on the possibility of more retrenchment at Barclays Bank of Kenya as it plans to shut about 7 branches from the 1st of October. Now, the firm, in a memo to its staff, said that it was merging various branches, and this will leave 7 of them, quote, relocated. Now, these are Moi Avenue, Haile Selassie, Wayakiwe, Kawangware, Raimtula, Nakumat, that's Nakumat Meru, and Wundanyi branches. Now, staff in these branches are set to be redeployed based on the available opportunities and matching competencies. Now, the memo reads, the lender in a statement, however, says that there will be no redundancies as a result of this exercise. Now, in this restructuring plan, the firm had announced that 130 staff were to be retrenched, and the concerns remain that the oncoming branches now merging may rise in the number of layoffs if there are no vacancies for some of the relocated persons. So just before we continue with those stories, I'd just like to introduce our guest in studio today. His name is Johnson Derry. Johnson Derry is a corporate finance manager from ABC Capital. Johnson, it's good to have you. It's a long while. Of course, we want to start with the story of the Java's, of course, acquisition by Abraj. And of course, we'll get into the detail of it. But what do you make of it? We're looking at a lot of more interest, especially by international partners, on local, shall I say, success stories in the country.
Well, obviously, investors, strategic investors, or investors in specialized fields have always been looking to get into Africa in a bid to diversify, their geographically and grow their top lines as well. But the one problem for Africa has always been scale. So when you're talking about transactions coming, why would anybody fly in from New York to Nairobi on a $1 million deal? That won't work. So they go for scale. That's what they used to, and they're now popping up deals that we are seeing deals that are providing that scale. We've seen in the past, as you've mentioned, Java, Old Mutual with Centum and Two Rivers, and we've seen a lot of these deals coming through. And as Kenya's economy grows and there's more integration and urbanization, then you can see a lot more developments delivering the skill that's required, and then you'll see a lot more private equity interest in the country.
I must admit that there's a lot of secrecy, of course, into all the deals that go in through, of course, mainly that take place in the boards. But from what you make of it, can you be able to have a scale of even such of other future acquisitions in this of this magnitude, I should say?
Well, obviously they'll pick up. I think from what we know in the private in the listed companies, like Centum, for example, that is a core to their strategy. So exits via sales to strategic investors is built in. So you've already seen a couple. You'll see more. In the insurance sector, you're likely to see more as well because of regulatory changes. You've already seen Prudential and interest from Morocco coming in. Banking as well. You've seen from Mauritius and even from Tanzania and from Nigeria. So you can expect to see more. Technology, a favorite for foreign investors, especially with the success of things like M-Pesa. So as Kenya, as you, and I think it's going to be driven largely by like the stock market, because that's the first route they come in through.
Did you find it interesting that even investment is not quite slowing, even as we say we're getting to an election year, about 34 days to go?
Yeah, well, well, you see, these people have long-term views, and in fact, this is the best time to buy. I mean, if your idea is to buy cheap, what a better time than now, So it's a very good incentive to drive in investment. They take opportunities as they come, not when they want to. So that really dictates quite a bit of their strategy.
Great. Just before we get into, of course, Barclays and Nakumatt, I just want to draw attention to our viewers. Of course, what is to expect on your copy of the Business Daily. We want to bring your attention as you just have the front page there. We apologize to our viewers. Of course, the picture we had on our dailies today was not that of Kevin Ashley, the founder and chairman of Java House. That's the correct picture you have right there. So, of course, we lead to the story on the 1.3 billion shillings. Of course, he's set to pocket after this acquisition by a Braj Group. That's on the main page, and of course that with the correct picture of Kevin Ashley, and a lot more on the corporate news. Of course, Johnson, I'll be asking you this about the Trans-Century exit of Zeph Mbugua, who served the board for about 18 years, and of course getting more details onto that. This is actually coming in 2 weeks after an exit of a similar board chair. Of course, a lot more on the economy and politics segment on your copy of the Business Daily. So yes, let's start from there. Trans-Century.
Yes.
We have Zeph Mbugua exiting. Of course, this is after the acquisition of Kuramo Capital. And what the current chairman says, the CEO of Kuramo Capital, is that really it's kind of a natural progression after the injection of capital from a different entity. But don't you sense there's some bit of a bit of controversy in the board, because in just in the 2 weeks we've had directors just leave?
Well, not really, not quite. I wouldn't go that far. Trans-Century was I mean, they had the bond that they needed to refinance, and they took the route of injecting a strategic, inviting a strategic investor to manage that, and the strategic investor came with his money, and of course, having brought in your funds and going with your quota on the board, then you bring in the skill set that you require, and that may or may not require a change in the board of the acquired company, but more often than not, there is usually a change, and so you should look at it in that light.
Let's look at, of course, the critical one. Just as we wrap up on Trans-Century, of course, they've even increased its stake in Civicon, and they're saying that they're actually foreseeing a lot more on the robust infrastructure increase. How do you sense this?
Well, perhaps they're looking at the manifestos of both Jubilee and NASA, and they're saying that's where the opportunities are.
Okay.
So yeah, they're positioning themselves to to benefit a lot more on those opportunities.
Johnson, allow me to still hold you in studio because I want to take on this story, which is quite critical. I'm sure it is on the minds of many Kenyans right now and investors where, of course, this is looking at the Nakumatt woes. We have employees of Nakumatt who receive their June salaries in tranches, and the retail outlet has been having financial difficulties, and it has announced in a memo that's dated 30th of June that the salaries of employees will be paid out in 3 installments until it is all paid out. Now, but as Andrew Ochieng reports, the Kenya Union of Commercial Food and Allied Workers, representing the employees, has already filed a dispute at the Ministry of Labour.
Sooner or later, the empty shelves, an inconvenience to the customers, and an indication of financial problems for Nakumatt was bound to start affecting employee wages. NTV has learned that for the last 3 months, the salaries of the staff have been intermittent, and this month they will be paid in phases. In the first week of July, the staff will be paid 30%, the second week the same, and on the third week the remaining 40%. The company says the tranches are to ensure uniformity and consistency in payment of salaries, as the company hopes to recover and stabilize. Oddly, in the memo, the company advises the employees not to be swayed from their collective responsibilities by a few individuals, and this is likely to be the Kenya Union of Commercial and Food Allied Workers, which represents 4,000 out of the workforce of 6,000.
Management should look for avenues of paying salaries in time, and if they are not able to, we need to sit the union, the management and the ministry to look for a way forward, a lasting solution, because the workers as we speak now are not able even to go to work.
The union says it filed a dispute with Nakumatt on Wednesday last week at the Ministry of Labour, and the two parties were to meet again on the 10th of July. The management has now come up with the memo, which the union says is odd and unlawful and is not a permanent solution.
The management has been telling us that they are looking for investors who are supposed to come in. We have been told this story for the last 1 year. So we don't know when this investor is coming in, and that is why we are saying before the investor comes in, the government should at least come in and bail out this company. And then they'll discuss after the investor comes in on what how to refund the money from the government.
The union also accuses Nakumatt of not remitting statutory deductions such as NHIF and NSSF, pension dues and even union fees. The Secretary General says that while the supermarket chain is in understandable financial constraints, its workers have to survive. Andrew Ochieng, NTV.
So, of course, delayed salaries. They have a pending suit with Thika Road Mall, about 51 million shillings. Johnson Derry, what do you make of this?
Well, I thought that it didn't have to come to this. There are many ways, I think, there are many things they could have done to forestall this issue. Of course, starting maybe 3 years out back, maybe they should have started looking for a strategic investor much earlier. I think they're already doing that, but I don't think as aggressively as they ought to have done. One of the problems, I think, with this economy is being able to predict when the economic shocks are coming. And that is why people usually, put up equity buffers to protect you for, because they act as shock absorbers. But at this point in time, if you, I think, my opinion, the pending the injection of funds of a strategic investor, if they're coming, I think they should have worked to resolve the situation amongst themselves. I know some of those companies, some of those suppliers are also indebted, so I know there are constraints to
Johnson, it's just looking a bit, because what we understand is that, of course, there are lots of investors, there are lots of PE firms that are actually looking towards injecting money into Nakumatt, but really they don't have the opportunity, or shall I say, the directors are not quite looking towards ceding control of ownership maybe to these PE firms. And if that were to happen, then we'll not be having such a crisis.
Well, I would imagine maybe we don't have the entire story. Mm-hmm. It may not just be an issue of ceding interest, control. It might be an issue of, if you maybe there are demands that perhaps Nakumatt ownership might find that is not in their interest, perhaps from an angle of valuation. We don't know what the valuations, the foreign investors, I mean, they're not necessarily foreign. The investors or strategic investors are looking to invest in, what their terms are. And those terms might be too onerous for, and that's what I was saying. Pending investment from investment from outside, sometimes, I mean, if they started today, it might take up to 8 months before they close it.
Okay.
Between those 8 months, they have to run somehow. So that's what I was saying. They should have I think they should find an arrangement with all creditors, and that may include even senior employees of Nakumatt.
Some analysts such as yourself say that maybe this is just by the tip of the iceberg, that there's a lot more that perhaps has not gotten into the public for that could affect Nakumatt.
Well, that's I was being cautious. I was saying we don't know what how the entire picture looks like.
Yeah.
But if they start reorganizing the balance sheet from internal, so that they rope in suppliers and creditors, and see how they can manage that pending investment, so that they can have a more firmer platform for.
So you paint a very positive outlook to Nakumatt. What next? You said 18 months. You're giving it kind of an 18-month buffer, and
no, I'm saying I'm saying that whatever the position they are in,
yes,
right, it's possible if they can get into an arrangement with the creditors and suppliers, they could have a better platform to engage investors on, and maybe now it will be easier for them to work to a solution that everybody is happy with. It's I mean, I've seen scenarios where investors are saying, you know what is due to you is zero, because every shilling I'll put in must go into either to manage the creditors or the suppliers.
All right.
So in such a scenario, do you think you would be able to sell if it were your investment?
So it's not all doom and gloom for Nakumatt.
It depends on how it's handled. It depends on how it's handled.
I notice you're being very careful, but understandably so. So there's a lot more, of course, we can look towards, and of course get more details onto this. But let's talk about Matters Investment, and I want to turn your attention, Johnson, to this at full screen just right behind us. Official data after the bond sale showed that 102,632 people registered on the Kiba platform. Now, get this: 5,692 investors bought the government paper, making it less than 6% of the number of people who registered on the platform. Now, individual investors bought the bond in different chunks, ranging from about 3,000 to 1.13 million shillings. And now the sale was mainly dominated by big buyers, not the retailers as it was meant to serve. Now, besides M-Pesa, that caps daily mobile transactions at 140,000 shillings. Mobile banking platform PesaLink has been launched and allows investors to make bond purchases of up to less than $1 million. It's about 999,000. This is shillings, and of course, looking at boosting up the uptick. Take 1, 2, sound 1, 2. So, Johnson, of course, the question has been, the Kiba platform was to ensure that, it's more for the Kadogo market, which is really the Mama Mbogas, to make them more open to kind of investment in government securities. These numbers are quite startling because it doesn't quite show that. What do you make of them?
I'm not surprised. Any time you set out to sell anything, it doesn't matter what your target market is. Usually, you'll get a 10% hit if you're lucky. That means for every 10 people you approach, one will take up your offer. So I think it was a good deal by and large. However, it will take some time for people to buy into it, and for some people, I'm sure it was perhaps just an issue of cash flows. Sometimes maybe I really wanted to invest, but maybe I didn't have the money at that time. So all these factors taken together usually contribute to this kind of scenario playing out. But over time, it will pick up. it'll pick up and it'll move to the direction they want it to do.
Don't you think opening it up to PesaLink, look, this is actually to a limit of about 999, which is just under a million shillings. Looking at what the intention of Emakiba was to ensure that, you with your mobile phone can actually just go on M-Pesa and perhaps any other mobile payment network and pay or even buy for the bonds. But now opening this up to a million, I mean, to be honest, investors were looking to put in a million shillings into Emakiba, our long-term investors, quote, still going back to the initial investors who've been there all along.
But maybe some people have not been investing maybe because of convenience, the whole arrangement of going to CBK, opening, then coming back to the bank and transfers and filling forms. So it could be, perhaps this actually solves some of that. PesaLink is mobile-based anyway, so it's still at the same platform as M-Pesa, or at least they're similar. But the target, like you rightly put forward, is the small saver who are holding money in M-Shwari and whatever. So now they've got the ability to invest directly into government bonds. The upper limit wouldn't concern me so much. It's a lower limit.
Two questions for you right now.
Yes.
You have 10,000 shillings right now. Would you invest it in Emakiba, or will you put in investing in a Mama Mboga who's waking up at 5 o'clock to sell veggies in the market?
The Mboga, if I've got a good relationship with her,
And why is
I can probably get a better deal, and my cash flows turnaround is much faster. End of day, I'll know if I've got a default or I'm gonna get paid back, and I'll reinvest it tomorrow and the day after. I don't have to wait for 3 years to get a return.
Johnson Derry, thank you so much for speaking with us. That has been Johnson Derry, who's the corporate finance manager at ABC Capital. Of course, a lot more just discussing on corporate news and, of course, investment, long-term investment by government on government securities and a lot more. Of course, right now, I want to take a pause looking at matters business and cross over to Kisumu County, where my colleague Oko Kusa is standing by with the latest on the political scene. Okusa, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Laban Cliff. Here in Kisumu, it's a heated debate regarding the 6-piece voting pattern.